The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
All right, it's episode number 114, and it is 23 days till the digital man burns as of this recording, I believe. I'm not 1,000% sure what's happening with that. This opening part where I say how many days it is till the man burns is one of those little things that gives a lot of listeners chills. It's kind of like an exciting thing that people kind of look forward to. So it's a mild bummer that I can't say it with that powerful determination I normally do, but we burners are always ready for shifts, changes, and pivots, if nothing else. So fuck your burn. I remain hopeful that it will be 388 days till the next physical man burns. Yes. As of this recording. As most of you are aware, there is a digital burn happening. It is an unprecedented event, and artists and burners all over the world have poured a great deal of heart and soul into making Black Rock City a digital reality in the wake of COVID. There's a great article on TechCrunch that I was actually reading earlier today about the virtual burn. It just went out live like 19 hours ago, so go check that out. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. When they put the call out to get some big tech involvement in doing this year's first ever virtual burn, Burning Man's what's this person's title here? Kim Cook, the director of art and civic engagement, said, this is their exact quote, some of the groups that reached out to the Burning Man project were companies that were willing to build a Burning Man experience but wanted like official branding presence. Yeah. Despite a what's that word? Precarious financial position, Burning Man's organizers declined help from these sponsors, citing the org's adherence to decommodification, a desire to prevent corporate infiltration of the event. Okay. So I appreciate that. Could you imagine that? Like Qualcomm presents Burning Man.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Gross.
Still fighting the good fight. I hoped to get a voice on the show to break down everything we need to know about this year's digital burn while I was in San Francisco the other week, but was unable to due to a laundry list of reasons. We're hoping to throw together a sort of mini episode so that I can learn right along with many of you about what it's all going to be. This show, however, our focus is more the Burning Man community that thrives. Not just this episode. This show as a whole is focusing on that. The Burning Man, the community that connects and expands the other 355 days of the year. This show is not just about that one burn out in Gerlach. Burning Man is, of course, one of the main characters of this show, but the real main focus on this podcast is you. It's the conversations, it's philosophies, experiencing the world as a burner and sharing those thoughts and experiences with each other in order to expand and grow. And today's point of focus is one we've been trying to get to for a minute, and things just kind of kept happening to postpone today's chat. We're going to get into some of those things. Today's chat, as with all of our chats on this show, will probably be a little all over the place. We'll get snarky, we'll get serious, we'll have various side conversations about silly shit, all the stuff that normally happens on this show.
Oh, good, we can curse.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yay. I was going to ask you that. I was like, I got a bad mouth.
No, we put that in the warning intro for a reason. But the intention is to hit deeper on what it's like experiencing Burning Man in this episode as a person of color. The big event out in Gerlach, as well as the community in general. That's the topic that we're diving deep into. That's the thing that we've been trying to get into for a while, and we just haven't been getting around to for a while. And we'll get into all the reasons why. My guests today are both Black burners. Kenos is a techno DJ and disco DJ, community regular, and I'm going to say re-emerging photographer. Because he didn't shoot for, he gave like that look. Yeah, look at that look. I brought him a tripod today. He already had one.
and I rejected it.
He rejected my tripod.
I don't need a tripod. I already got 3.
You got 3 tripods. That's pretty funny. He's got a tripod. He's got a triad of tripods.
Triad of
tripods. And Avita Sawyer's, I said intellectual is what I started it as. I put polyactivist, but I guess like now it works. Like you were a non-monogamy coach officially.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
There's actually quite a few of us.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more, and obviously as polyamory picks up steam, where there's more of a need for this particular niche of
Absolutely.
coaching.
You've been writing and speaking and talking about it for a while, and the demand for you to actually come into people's lives and help them with some of this stuff showed up. I actually also wrote unpublic speaker because I've been seeing you all over like podcasts and interviews and stuff. You've become like one of those like talking heads that you see like on CNN and stuff, but it's been on podcasts. So she's been out there. Ken and I, of course, have been good friends for quite some time, and we've been talking about doing this episode. My producer, Lana, by the way, out in Brooklyn, has become like a big fan of yours already. Like as soon as I connected, she was like, I'm following everything Avita says. And write a book already. Fuck.
It's being manifested. It's
coming.
In the universe.
It's coming. We started throwing this episode together like last freaking year, and the reason it took so long to come out is actually going to be a part of today's conversation, which we'll get into. So today's chat is going to be some of that non-white folks talk. Finally, I recorded 2 episodes in Africa, and all my guests were white.
Wow.
Yeah. This show
In South Africa.
straight went to Africa. Yeah.
In South Africa.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised.
We'll get to that. We'll talk about all that. After the chat today, you'll be hearing a deep house set by Mickey Beach camper Jay Richards. His government name is Joshua Buehler. Buehler. That's Buehler, right?
No shit.
You know Joshua?
Of course.
There you go. Of course you do. You camp together at the Mickey Beach.
Of course.
The set that you'll be hearing was recorded from atop the Fluffy Cloud at last year's Burning Man on Thursday night. I interviewed the Cloud's creator, Jorge, on episode number 109 of this podcast, so definitely go check that out. And stick around after the chat today for Jay Richards. But let's go ahead and get into today's show. Today's episode is entitled Burning Man So White. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the buzz and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
Really? What makes
So
it,
good luck with whatever
what makes it
vomit comes
official?
out of it. That intro is like, I listen to podcasts myself, so
Yeah.
you always hear the intro when people, talking like that into it, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit, people are gonna be hearing me now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
So it set the stage for you to be on a podcast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're cooking.
Well, it's funny because like I on the previous show that I used to co-host, which got me into podcasting, is called Crappy Awesome. It was one of the original podcasts in the independent hip hop community, and
Telling me that.
yeah, I was doing that for a long time, and we would always do the intro with the guests in the room, and it actually like set the stage, like set the energy, and like the
Yeah.
guests kind of like, oh, okay, we're about to do a show.
It just
And then,
happened.
yeah, on Burner Podcast, I didn't do that from the beginning because I just kind of just start talking.
Right.
And then before we knew it, it was a comfortable conversation. And so, each side sort of has its ups and downs. But now we're doing this because we're recording it all in one take. And I am honored to have both of you here with me
I'm super excited.
on
Yeah,
this
same.
experience. So I have some notes here of like random topics and stuff that I wanted to hit. we may hit some of them, we may hit all of them. There's no actual format to this. I really just wanted to kind of like get into some of these topics with you two. And it's just going to be a casual chat. Like, we're not speaking on behalf of anybody. It is very much, as we say in the intro, it's our opinions and experiences. This is not a scientific paper.
Yeah.
It is a conversation. The name of this episode, of course, Burning Man So White, was a trending hashtag from the last couple of years leading up to Burning Man. That's where it came from. And I knew that so the explanation of why this episode took so long to start, so we can all kind of get here. I knew I wanted to record this roundtable about the Black experience at Burning Man. I wanted to focus specifically on that topic. I knew I wanted you to. In fact, part of the inspiration for it, Evita, came when you started like speaking and posting and recording videos, even before you'd gone to Burning Man.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I had multiple people message me, people I respect, who were like, you should listen to what this new person has to say. And I'm like, I don't know who this new person is, but like, this is a long video. All right, fine, I'll listen to it. And like, yeah, there's a lot of fascinating.
It was Mickey, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Mickey Vale
connected us. Mickey Vale connected
right.
us because you and I had met before a long time ago. Remember I
Right,
told you
right,
that
right.
at a Polyam, like some party or something like that?
We met at a Poly Play party.
Yeah, Poly Play party.
There's moaning happening like in the background.
Yeah, we met at this party. I was
Evita
with one of my
talking.
partners.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we just kind of said, hey, what's up? Like, and then that was it. And then Mickey connected us.
Yeah,
and that's how we ended up talking about this. Yeah.
Mickey
After I made
Vale's
a video.
amazing artist, by the way. MC, DJ, poet, playwright. I mean,
Right.
she's a phenomenal human
Yeah,
being.
she's starting a new venture called Soul Kiss Theater. And so, she's doing big things.
Yeah,
so, shout out to Mickey.
Mickey's super dope. You know what? We'll have to link to Mickey Vale after this too. But yeah, I knew I wanted to have that talk. I knew I wanted you. Ken and I have been friends, and we've had quite a few experiences. And I knew that I wanted to have him as a part of the conversation. I was like, this would be good to connect. You two, you've never met before until today.
Never seen even.
No.
And then,
yes, new friends.
there you go. Yeah. And then I knew for the third voice, what I really wanted was to kind of like balance it out, to have like a round table the way we've been doing this for a few years. I wanted somebody who was older and who had more experience at Burning Man, watching it over the course of like, let's say closer to 10 years or more. So we could have like a balance of those voices. And I kept trying to make that happen, and it just wasn't happening. Like scheduling kept not happening. A person would be in town and then they weren't available. One of the fascinating things that hit me was like, I know a lot of people in San Diego, and I was having a hard time finding somebody in San Diego. It's not to say they don't exist. It wasn't happening. It wasn't showing up. It wasn't crossing my desk. I kept finding people in LA and San Francisco, but I knew I wanted to record here, and it just wasn't happening, which is one of the things that hit me about how white San Diego is.
Yes. Very.
I didn't realize how white it was till I tried to put together that episode. And I was like, usually this is easy. Like, usually I just put a couple of texts out and somebody shows up and here we are. But for some reason, it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
But either way, then COVID happened and we kind of locked down a little bit. And I remembered, for me personally, with this show, that my desire for doing this had never been to like be another marketing channel for Burning Man,
Right.
but to be a conversation amongst friends. So that's why we're here.
Yay.
Right on.
And I'm glad to.
knew when it was supposed to happen.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how?
Yeah, it was meant to be casual. It was meant to be comfortable. Evita, tell us a little bit about sort of like your background. Where were you born and raised? How did you end up here in the burner community? I know you'd been around our scene for a while before you actually attended Burning Man. So you were already like a regular with a lot of like the circles that I was attending. And then you actually finally made it out to the Gerlich Regional. So a little background on you.
So I was originally born in Jersey City, New Jersey. And then when I was 17, I joined the United States Navy, which brought me out here to San Diego. And then once I got out of the Navy, I just lived my life out here, got married, had my kids, and just kind of settled down out here. And went through a lot of iterations of who I was as a person to get to this one now. And so I began to... I went through this shift and was like, kind of like, now, like, who am I what do I like? What do I experience? And so I began to sort of try different things on that I just had never either had access to or never really thought were things that I would be into. Variety of things, camping, all of these different things, raving, those kinds of environments. And I don't even know how I became aware of what Burning Man was, but somehow I became aware of it, and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And my nickname for myself is Adventure Bay, so I just love doing adventurous things.
That's
so I was
super
like-
interesting. I'm going to cut you off a few times to get you to elaborate on certain points. So I apologize ahead of time, multiple times, if that's going to happen. Your upbringing in Jersey, was that more conservative?
It was more conservative. It also was just very black, and a very specific black, so very black inner city.
Okay.
So I lived in Jersey City, New Jersey, not a lot of green space. I literally went camping for the first time probably like maybe 2 years ago, and even then it was at like a KOA campground, which is basically like paying a hotel to sleep outside, So like it wasn't like real deal camping. Like I'm just like all of this is new to me. And so I grew up very urban black. So we didn't have experiences like this. That wasn't my party scene. That's just not how we spent our leisure time. Camping, this kind of stuff was very much considered, that's that white people shit. You hear that?
Right.
That's very much like what I was brought up with. But then I leave Jersey City and I come to San Diego, and now I'm in this ship and I'm in this vast environment, and so I just began to have access and awareness of other things.
Right.
And
was being adventurous and stepping out of sort of like the bounds of normalcy, was that something that you felt was encouraged by your immediate family, or did it take some? Okay.
That was very encouraged by my immediate family. My parents are
adventurous.
they're adventurous people. It's for me, it was definitely lack of access, so that just environment just wasn't really available to me, and then no one else really around me were doing those things. So
Can I ask what they did?
No.
What their jobs were?
Their jobs were, so my mom, when I came on the scene, or the last job that I remember my parents had, they both worked at Merrill Lynch, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so they worked at Merrill Lynch during the 80s. So my parents have always had financial jobs.
Okay.
Or not financial jobs, but professional jobs.
Right,
They've
right,
always
right.
had professional jobs. And then my dad worked at New Jersey Transit as a train dispatcher. My mom worked at a advertising agency for a little bit, and then she worked at the Urban League.
Okay.
And that's where she kind of got into her political sort of activism. So she would do a lot of programs and things like that. And so I always grew up in this very like, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, kind of family. But there just wasn't a lot of examples of other ways of living around.
Right.
Everybody was kind of pretty much in the same
Right.
space. I grew up in a very black place.
You were a little bit more primed from a younger age to
Yes.
like explore the stuff that
Absolutely.
this community does. Yeah.
And my dad was
'Cause I
very
was the opposite.
good. My dad was very good about exposing us to culture. We lived close
Yeah.
to New York City, so he would take us to restaurants, and we would go to museums and plays and things like that. My parents were very, very, very intentional
Right.
about making sure that we grew up as cultured children. So the world was always a big place for me. It always
Right.
was. Yeah.
Right, and that's so fascinating. So the interesting thing is, one of the questions I often ask on this show is, how did Burning Man enter your consciousness? But you have no idea. It just showed up.
It just showed up. I
Yeah.
think it was an article or just
Right.
something. It just kind of showed up, and I remember reading about it and going, that sounds cool.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that was it. But I had always heard that it was something that you kind of had to know somebody or know someone in the community, in order to get access to it. That's, the way I thought about it. And so I didn't really pursue trying to go.
Right.
And then through just the changes in life that I made, it sort of brought me into this place where it became closer to my awareness, and I began to talk about my desire to go. And one of the things that I noticed as I began to talk about my desire to go is there were other black people in my circle that knew about it, and the immediate reaction was, that's that white people shit. You know what I mean? Or like, or like, I would not do that. I don't feel comfortable enough to do that. That would kind of be the ideas that I got around it when I would talk about it. And but I had some other friends that were like, oh, if you want to do this, this is how you get into it. So find
Right.
this meetup, or you can talk to this person. And so they began to kind of connect me little by little closer to the community. And I found out that there was a burner meetup in San Diego. And they're like, oh, if you want to meet people so you can figure out people to camp with and those kind of things. And I knew someone who ran a camp at Utopia, and we were in a different group together. And so they began to talk to me about that. And so I went to a burner meetup.
Right.
And when I got there, there was only 2 people there. And it was 2 white guys. And they asked me, as we were sitting there just kind of chopping it up and waiting for people to arrive, they asked me, why don't black people burn? It was like one of the first questions that they asked me. And so I began to share with them, based on what I had heard different friends and acquaintances say, why we don't burn and my own thoughts on it. And so it propelled me to make a video about it.
Right.
And so I made this video on my Facebook. And I do lives on my Facebook all the time about a variety of
Right.
shit, And so I did this live on Facebook, and I shared it in, I think, the LA Burner group. And obviously, a conversation about that is always incendiary. And so you get people that are like, yeah, this is my experience, or, I don't even know why we have to talk about this, or, all these different things that people say. And it connected me to Bill Gilman, who runs the Black Rock Explorers, I think, or Black Rock City Explorers.
Okay.
Black Rock Explorers Camp is a kids camp. And he reached out to me, and he was like, I really loved your video. And so we started talking about it. And he facilitated me going to my first burn, which was Bequinox in 2019.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and he was like, hey, if I get you a ticket, will you go? And I was
Right.
like, yeah, I'll go. If you get me a ticket, I'll go. So I have never met this man. I don't know him, okay? I have never been to a burn. I have never officially really camped, okay?
Yeah.
And I am driving out to California City, which is 5 hours away. I had this moment where there's no signal, and I'm like, shit. Okay, you about to die, bitch. Like, that's how I felt.
Around all these white people.
Right. So I'm to meet this. No one that I knew was going to be there. Not a single solitary person I think that I'd ever met in actual meat space life was going to be at this burn. And I'm getting this random ticket from this random white guy that I don't know to go be in the desert with these people that I don't know, camping for a weekend by myself because nobody came with me. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go. So that's what I did. And I had a ball. I loved it. And he was like, you are absolutely a burner. And I was like, I'm absolutely a burner. I'm such a fucking burner. I had a great time, right? So that was the first burn that I went to. And then
I want to stop you over there because I want to get Ken's backdrop and I want to come back to yours.
Excellent.
Because we can get like running alongside each other, like how you're both developing. Ken, how did you enter planet Earth?
It's funny you say that because I've been really in the cosmos lately.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to dive into that. So I was born in Nigeria, in Benin City, Nigeria. And I moved to the States when I was about 10 and a half. And moved to...
What brought you here? Was it did you come here with family?
Yeah, family. I think my parents already knew that. They met here in the States in college. And so they already knew it was going to be a better lifestyle here, because things were kind of crazy back there, So they knew that from the jump they wanted to get us
Crazy. Can we elaborate very quickly for listeners who are not aware?
Like
politically.
Nigeria's a very, very wealthy country, but also very corrupt. So when it comes to things like crime, just like people's need for survival, they'll do whatever to survive, During the time when I came to the States, it was during the, I don't know if you've ever seen Hotel Rwanda.
Yeah.
That was going on up north, So, then we have no idea what's gonna, come down, make its way down, to the south, where we lived. And it was a bunch of, there's a lot of killing going on. And so they knew they wanted to get us out of there. So that was kind of the premise that led us to, wanting to move to the States.
Right.
So
there was kind of a plan, from the day you were born, kind of that eventually
that's
you'd be
even
making
the
it back here.
reason. It's even the reason why they gave us English first names and our traditional middle names.
Yeah.
Because they knew we'd be here eventually. They wanted us to have that kind of a lifestyle, so we wouldn't be that different, so to say.
Yeah.
So
no, a lot of your story so far is actually similar to a lot of Iranians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a few times, I think. So. That was how we got to the States. So we moved to Texas, to Dallas, and just north of Dallas. And this is kind of where there's a big West African community out there. So I'm actually half Nigerian, half Sierra Leonean. So there's a big community out there. And we're our culture. We're big on community, and so that's kind of why when I first got into Burning Man, it just made sense to me, So anyway, so we moved out there, and then I've kind of been all over. I moved after I graduated college in like 2006. I used to think the entire U.S. was like Texas. Right, so I used to.
A lot of Europe thinks that too, by the way.
Yeah,
Europeans think all of America is like Texas. Yeah.
So I thought the entire U.S. was like Texas. So I remember the first time I think I traveled. I went to my first time actually leaving the state since I had moved there in '93. I went to California because I was dating someone who I met in school. I went to California for like a week, and I was in like the Bay Area, and I remember being there and just kind of. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt different. I was like, something's just different about this place, And it's not the weather. It's just something just feels different. And so I became curious about it. And so I told myself after I graduated college, I was going to go live somewhere else for like 3 years. I'd come back to Texas, And so I left, moved to the Bay Area, and then I've never went back to Texas.
Yeah.
And this was in 2006. So
what was that different thing? Can you articulate it now?
It was I think just being like liberal, being liberal, because Texas is very conservative.
Yeah.
Nigeria is very conservative, and so I just did a lot of things. I had been just kind of like trained to think. I moved to California. I remember thinking that and just kind of being like, I feel it doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
I remember the first fight at the time girlfriend I got into was because it was during the vote for Prop 8.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her asking me how I was going to vote for it, and I said, "Oh, I don't know. I'll probably just not vote because I don't want to cause any kind of controversy there, And she's like, "Well, you do know that not voting pretty much means you're voting for, voting for it, or is it for it against?
Yeah,
it?
for it.
For
correct.
it, right?
For it.
And
Now,
so,
voting for Prop 8 was to pass restrictions
on
and that's where like a lot of people got mixed up on it.
Right. And so when she said that, I was like, well, I don't believe that that's right because Adam and Eve and blah 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 blah, because this is where I was raised.
Right.
And then that was our first fight, and after a while it just kind of hit me, and I was like, I think maybe like a few months later I was like, who the fuck am I to say two people who love each other can't marry each other, And from then on, like, things just like changed with me.
Isn't it funny to reflect back? I literally just had a post came up on Facebook today that I posted something about like what the women that want to date my son, like how they have to show up, and it was so cringy. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that was me. Like, so isn't it funny to look back on those times? Yeah.
The way we've been programmed, and so I saw, that was all the kickstart to what I think I went through I would say like my, where I kind of evolved around that time from like 2008 to right around like to maybe till now, I would say, but that's when I started questioning religion. I started questioning marriage, started questioning monogamy, like everything I'd been like programmed in me before. And I just started exploring everything, so right around the same time. So I eventually moved to Brooklyn in 2011. And when I was in Brooklyn, my brother and I really started kind of exploring like the electronic scene and like, it's like in house music and techno and things like that. So I started going to festivals, my first festivals. And we went to...
Can I ask you a quick question? I'm going to ask a lot of really silly questions too, by the way.
I love silly.
Because we talk about the shit people are embarrassed to talk about.
Okay.
So Brooklyn, hip hop mecca, definitely a very different experience for a black man, I would imagine, than Texas. And you discover techno. And over here, now here's the thing. I know from like my own, like I spent years interviewing in music. I know how much techno is influenced by hip hop, how much of an overlap there is. I know so many DJs that started in hip hop and then got into techno. Desert Hearts, actually, a lot of those, like Mikey started out like Wu-Tang, hip hop. That's what he was into. And that's how he got into like house and tech house and stuff. So what was it like over there? Was this an observation you were having at all about the differences in the scenes, and like, was it a lot more mixed up over there because it's still New York? It's more intercultural.
Regarding what the scene and as far
like
as,
the techno
music,
scene, as far as like how white it was versus not.
I didn't really. So I stopped seeing that, if that makes sense. After a while, I just saw it. I mean, so I grew up thinking that, thinking that if I listened to anything that wasn't hip hop, it made me white, or that was reserved for white people, you know. So when I kind of came out of myself and, you know, I started, you know, evolving and just being a lot more open-minded, I learned that techno it was created by black people.
Yeah.
You know, and so for the first time, I think I didn't feel ashamed to explore that, or because before I would hear it before way before 2011, but I just wouldn't openly admit to listening to techno or house music, or, you know, things like that. So when I was
from me, it was my friends and family would hear it, and they'd think I'm listening to gay music. They're like, "Oh, you like the gay shit?"
Yeah. For us,
like,
that was devil's music, and, you know, in Texas, that was devil's music, you know. So that was
you know what, it sort of is.
Yeah. And so I didn't when I went into the scene, I didn't really see it as anymore as it belonging to anyone. It's music. Music's meant to be shared,
right?
You know. So when I go out, it doesn't matter if I'm the only person that's black there or whatever it is. I'm going for a reason, for the music. So I stopped even thinking about it that way, of who's all around me and things like that. And I think I became so comfortable with I became comfortable with new experiences and being different. I've been different my whole life, you know.
Right.
Coming from Nigeria to the States, like, I've always been different, talk different, sound different, look different. So when I came to the music scene, I also, same thing. I was like, yo, it's another. I know I want to hear this, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who's around.
No, it's similar. I mean, like, I've always got the weirdest name in the room, so I'm like, all right, this is not normal.
For me, I feel like it's something that I notice and am aware of, but I don't feel like it has to limit my interaction with it, because I want to be there, you know. So it's definitely something that I pay attention to. Like, I notice, and I'm like, okay, I know that I'm probably the only black girl there, and sometimes it does get a little wearisome, or there's like a few, I call a few chocolate sprinkles in a sea of vanilla.
Because we have to be aware.
Right, yeah, exactly. You gotta do that. Like, how many of us are here? You know, you count.
Something goes wrong, I see you.
Yeah, so you do a little count. Like, so you stick in the room. Okay, it's 5 of us. All right, I'm good. You know, and so I know where they at. But yeah, I started just kind of expecting it, and then also started kind of going, is this just something that I want to do? And then the demographic kind of really didn't matter to me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so since we're on that topic, we're going to do a quick segue and talk exactly about what you just described.
Yeah.
Because this is this is part of the black experience in America. I don't know what that feels like, because I walk into a room, I'm like, I am the only one that looks like me here, usually. So tell me about that. Why does that happen? Why there is the eye contact thing? There is, like, I see you. I've seen it. I've been with it a million times. What's going on in that moment in your heads?
For me, it's more about sort of just casing the joint and sort of kind of going, okay, like, how many of us are here? I have some things that I do that I know there's going to be more people counting, something I know it's going to be less. And so I think it's me going, okay, how other am I in this space? Like, so that's one thing that's going through my mind. Based on, like, how many of me are there, I can kind of go, like, how othered I'm going to be in the space. It's also sort of a protection thing. So like you said, if something goes wrong, you want to know how many of us are there, especially as it comes to dealing with things maybe regarding race. You kind of want to be able to kind of have someone that you feel like you could go to if you needed that specific refuge. And then I think it's just something that we do as human beings. Like, we sort of class and case the joint when we go places, and we just sort of kind of calculate. I'm just that kind of person. So I take a look around. I'm like, you know, where's the exits? How many black people are here? And it's just something that you do. My husband does it. All the black people I know, we all do that. Like, yeah. Unless we know we're going to be in a place where there's a lot of us, you know, you don't have to do that. Then you're like, okay, I don't have to do that.
With me, it's definitely the protection thing that kind of comes to the forefront of my mind first, you know, because we've, you know, growing up in Texas, I've been seeing a lot of, you know, like, race crimes, you know, so it becomes like a natural thing for me now. I've been also brought up that way, to where it's, you know, we know how sometimes people can get, you know, as far as, like, if you're somewhere where it's a group of, like, white people or something, you know, and just being from the South, like, growing up in the South, we have to be aware of that. So you go somewhere and you see only a few black people, you kind of have to. It's like we don't even speak. We just see each other. We're kind of like,
you feel a little safer.
Right. You see each other. You kind of like, it's like, what up? I see you. What up? I see you.
Yeah.
I got you. Boom.
I guess, like, now that as you're describing it, it's making me think. it's rare that I'll see another Middle Eastern person that I'll necessarily feel that with, but just generally seeing like how solo am I in this room?
Right.
Like if there is a few other people that look like I feel like I could connect with this person, and like a lot of times it might be skin tone, it might be the way they're dressed. Like there's something you're looking for. Like, do I feel totally alone in this? And I would imagine that is a part of the process that a lot of us go through on some level. But specifically, being black in America, there's a whole rich history behind why that's important with safety. And I wonder, like, when you meditate in your own solo time, when you're journaling, when you're thinking about this experience, do you explore how much of that to you feels like it's almost like an energetic reception of, like, ancestral lineage versus immediate experiences?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm getting into some hippie shit here.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. It's definitely coded into our DNA, the things that we've needed to do in order to survive the system that we are oppressed under. So I'm actually I do these walks in the morning with a Girl Track. They're called Black History Boot Camp, and it's these women, and they go out and walk and they talk about these different things. And it's really showing me all of the mechanisms that we've developed as black people to literally stay alive under this oppressive system that presses us down, and how we pass those on because we're like, hey, this is what it takes for you to get through this, and we pass those on to our children. And as the times change, we have to re-examine those things and go, this still serves me, and this no longer serves like the place that we're in. So like some of those things are things that I have to kind of sit with myself and go, okay, do I really need this, going forward? Because is this a example of, my ancestors sort of passing on this wound and this coping mechanism to get through this? And is this still necessary in the current, how I live, how I show up to this timeline? So absolutely, I do have to examine those things. And some of those things we do have to keep. Some of those things we have to augment. And some of those things you have to let go of. And that's part of the healing process. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it, it's like the question that we ask, like when we're having healing experiences or in yoga, like, is this release all that's no longer serving you? It doesn't mean that it was a negative thing. It means that it's just not necessary anymore.
And it's necessary work to do, because it's also necessary work to do as black people to begin to really own that we deserve to have a full human experience that is not shaped and modeled by fear.
Right.
So a lot of me, like, confronting those things is me going, number one, I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to let that go. And number two, like, I am in the motherfucking building. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm going to be in the building where I deserve to take up space. And I deserve to take up space where I want to take up space. And I have to let go of some fear, because there are definitely people that feel that I don't belong in some of the spaces I belong in. Yeah. And it takes that, like looking at that fear to challenge that, so that you can show up and begin to kind of challenge that in other people. So you're going to make space for me. That's kind of why I do that. I do that work. And I also don't want to pass it on to my kids. I have children. I don't want to pass it on to my kids. I don't want them to live a life that's shaped by fear. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say as to why I became so comfortable with being in situations and environments when I'm the only one that's not, where I don't fit or quote unquote belong, is because I realized I started getting more out of life and learning more the more I was kind of facing these fears and like discomforts, So I became very comfortable exploring like new things I wasn't familiar with, things I wasn't brought up with, So it's funny you say. I was just going to say the exact same thing. It's what kind of shaped me and led me to going to Burning Man. I knew going there I'd be probably one of the few black people there, but it didn't bother me for a second.
Yeah, And I also want to highlight that your ability to do that is directly related to the amount of trauma that you have experienced, like, as a black person. So, like, I am fortunate enough and privileged enough that, I've experienced racism on a systemic level, but not necessarily on a personal level, and not on a traumatic or like a violent level, which some people have absolutely experienced either in their families or themselves. So it allows me the space to feel a little bit more empowered to be able to do those things because of my, like, personal history, where someone else, depending on I would say that we all, as people of color, have our own personal tolerances for the trauma of, like, racism and whiteness and, like, how it's shown up in our lives. And so I try not to judge someone who doesn't feel as free to be able or as empowered to be able to do those things, because I understand that we all kind of choose how we show up to this for our own belief about our ability to be able to survive it or get through it. So, but me, myself, personally, I find this to be a necessary work because there needs to be made room for us, and there needs to be like this challenge for non-POCs to kind of look at us and say, you know, this person belongs.
Right.
You know, this person can be here too, and that's okay. And they deserve full humanity. So that's kind of, I feel like that's where my activism around this, you know, lies. I am okay with being the only black face in the room. Right. You know, because you're going to see me, you know, and I absolutely belong to be here just like you do.
Yeah, I have the list that I mentioned earlier of like topics that I want to hit. Multiple of those things came up in just this exchange right now, so we're going to come back and dissect each one of those things. One of them that popped up in my head right now is like the experience that here's something that no matter what your skin color is, you may have a frame of reference for. Invisible borders. The feeling that there are certain places that you're kind of allowed to be and not allowed to be, like what you were just describing, and not being able to quite explain why you even have that reference.
Right.
You know, like in my upbringing, for example, personally, my parents kind of raised me to like carry myself in a manner where I don't see any of those things. But then I did have experiences, especially here in the United States, of hitting invisible borders like that. And an example of like that, something like that hit me was at Burning Man. I won't say the name of the camp, but like at some point I ended up at like a 1% camp, like a super duper rich camp. And I walked in there and I'm looking around and I'm like, I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. And like, mind you, a lot of Burning Man, that happens to me a lot. Like I'm walking around like, I feel like I'm not supposed to be here, but no, it's fucking Burning Man. I can be wherever I want.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing over there. I could be there, but I remember feeling this sense of discomfort. A few months later, I'm back in San Diego. For those of you who are not familiar with San Diego's region, north of San Diego, there's an area called Rancho Santa Fe, which like Oprah owns a home there. Like it's like super wealthy. I was born and raised in San Diego. Aside from my time in the Middle East, I've been here most of my life. I don't think I'd ever been there. Mm-hmm. I've been all over San Diego. And then something happened. I ended up out there and I'm walking around and I'm like feeling, this is me at 38. And I'm walking around feeling a little bit like, do I feel okay being here? I'm a little afraid. I'm like, need to be a little more aware of which side of the street I'm walking by. Like they don't have sidewalks. Wait, what's the traffic laws? This would be really embarrassing and I had all these ridiculous thoughts that were taking over, and it was similar to the thoughts I was having when I walked into that 1% camp.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on experiences like that, like what these invisible borders feel like. It's ridiculous, but
I'm smiling so much because I have a lot of thoughts on Rancho Santa Fe because I work there. But I'm going to reserve that for a different day.
I do have like experiences where I definitely go, like I said, I'm very othered in this space where I'm like, oh, like, or these people don't often see me, you know? Yeah. So, and you do begin to feel a little bit more guarded. Number one, because I think that's just something that we do as human beings in general. Mm-hmm. We're in an environment that, you know, we're not comfortable in. And so you want to pay attention and sort of observe what the social mores are in that environment, you know, so that you aren't violating anything. But then also understanding that because you're other, and you're other in a very specific way, that you are going to be scrutinized more heavily. And as people of color, especially as black people, we're scrutinized more heavily for doing things that other people just aren't. Right. So you have to kind of be aware of your behavior because you don't know how somebody is going to perceive what you're doing and then what trouble that's going to find you in if they don't like something that you are doing. Right. Especially if you're dealing with these more oppressive classes, like people that are wealthy, or, you know, like white people, you know, heterosexual people, if you're queer, you know, whatever way that you're othered, you know that you're going to be scrutinized more heavily. And so it brings this guard up to where you don't really feel empowered or free to kind of be yourself because you don't know how that's going to be perceived.
Right. And there's, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, while you were speaking, one thought I had also about where I work in Rancho is that, you know, I've always realized America is a bubble from the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. You know, San Diego is a bubble inside a bubble inside a bubble. Rancho is like 10 more bubbles in. And one thing I definitely noticed when I, being there is like I've become hyper aware of how I'm seen, when I'm there. I can maybe count on 3 fingers how many black people I've seen in Rancho, and I've worked there for about 3.5 years, And I think, to what you were saying, I think we have to be aware of the way people perceive race is based on how they've been treated by maybe someone in that race or so, So I don't think when people see me in Rancho, they don't really see me. They see like us in me.
Yeah.
So they already have these preconceived notions of what I'm into. Oh, that guy likes hip hop and he might play basketball and blah blah blah. And so it's made me also become aware of how I'm acting.
Mm-hmm.
Around them, because I don't want to be seen as I'm not a threat.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a perception that they
Yeah.
have of your black skin. Like I have 2 black sons, and they're both 14. And one of them is getting ridiculously tall, like he's growing like crazy. And I'm starting to have these mom thoughts as a black mom. Is like, I know, especially black men specifically, but just black people in general, we're seen as a threat more often than not. And so becoming aware that like now that my son is kind of becoming a black adult, he's not going to be seen as a child anymore. He's going to be seen as a black man, and like all that carries. And I'm having to like process that in my parenting when he wants to just walk to the store or, go outside on a skateboard. And I'm like not wanting to be that bubble mom that says, no, you can't do this, and passing on that fear, while very much understanding that we exist in a world that weaponizes us simply for just carrying black skin. Right. So you have to sort of be mindful, and especially when you're in those environments where they're really, 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 they're not interacting with us. And so they're not only are they not interacting with us, they're not getting a broad spectrum of how we show up. A lot of what they think about us is either fueled by their interactions with us in the past, and then also public perception of who we are in their circle. And so having to be aware that I don't really know how these people feel about me, and so I want to keep myself safe, and so I kind of have to imagine almost the worst case scenario and be prepared for that, so that way I'm not, I don't find myself in a place where I'm actually in some very real danger simply for just existing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like with anything that we look at, like when you just imagine like the computer that is our human brain, everything we're looking at, the brain is like, I'm almost imagining like it's hitting a switch and it's playing that program of what to expect from that thing that I'm looking at, right? Like I'm looking at the speaker, the brain is hitting the switch of that's where sound is going to come out. And if it falls on you, it's going to hurt, right? So like when you're looking at people, if I see like water on the ground, okay, I might slip. So those triggers get hit, right? I, for example, have been told that I look inexplicably international to a lot of people.
Yeah, I can see
so, right. So, like, I might be in that environment, and even though I have that thought process in my head, that's not hitting the same trigger. Whereas, like, being black in America, again, like, there is a trigger that's being hit by that bubble inside the bubble inside the bubble inside the bubble that Ken just described, where immediately it plays a tape of fear and negativity, whereas with me, it might just be confusion.
Right.
You're like, that dude doesn't look normal. All right, moving on with my day. Whereas, like, latent racism that an individual didn't even appreciate that they had in their system because maybe they were born and raised in that particular region where they have no interactions with black folks, and then they see a black man walking down the street, and then that trigger gets hit, and they didn't even know that trigger was there.
Yeah, they're not aware of it, and they oftentimes don't seek to question it, and they also look for, like, things that you do that give them confirmation bias.
Right.
So they may look at something that you do that's very innocuous, but because they're running this tape, they're going to find a way to connect what you did to this tape.
Right.
And so you're like, I'm literally just existing, being a normal human being, looking at birds in the park, walking back from the store, carrying a bag of Skittles. Like, I'm doing these very normal things. But because they're playing that tape and they're looking for this confirmation bias, what are you wearing? How are you standing? The look on your face. Like sometimes it's like, why aren't you smiling? And I'm like, why do I have to give you a smile? It's to make you feel more comfortable because you're playing that tape and you're looking for things to corroborate that story that's going through your brain instead of seeing me as an actual human being just standing in front of you. Yeah.
Spot on.
And meanwhile, we're also playing that tape of them playing a tape.
Yep. And we're playing a tape, but what tape are they playing, right? Right.
So and then they're playing a tape of the tape that we're playing.
Right.
And before you know it, this is not a good time to do acid.
No, at all.
We're gonna come
Or
back.
you're already on acid, okay?
Which so just even exploring this particular topic is like one of that list of things. Like they have that list of reasons why we don't have more people of color at Burning Man. One of those things, one of those large list of things is like this psychedelic thought process. The idea of like being in your own skin and being able to look at somebody else, and then you get in their head and then it bounces back to your head and it goes back and forth. A lot of, again, random thoughts and opinions, like a lot of ethnic cultures. One of the examples that I've always looked at is like Maslow's pyramid.
Yes,
You know.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right, a hierarchy, right? Is it the bottom that's just survival? Like you're just trying
Yeah.
to get fed and like feed
Yeah,
your
it's that
children.
base need, housing,
Right.
clothing,
Water.
food,
Yeah.
water, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And like at the top of the pyramid, the very top of the pyramid is like, I've got everything covered. Now I feel so secure that I feel confident enough to go out in the middle of the desert and do psychedelics and explore my consciousness. Like that's a thought that I've had for a long time. And I've wondered if either of you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, in order for, and actually this was what I talked about in my video, was in order for you to feel free to let your consciousness expand and sort of leave your body and sort of shed this meat sack that you're kind of walking around and sort of re-envision it and reimagine it, or not even really concern yourself with it too much.
Right.
You have to feel like your body is safe so that you can do that. And a lot of black people specifically, and marginalized identities in general, if you're queer, if you're trans, they don't exist for long periods of time, or really any period of time, where they feel like their bodies are safe enough to explore that. And that's that bottom tier pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid of just basic survival, keeping my body safe. And so not only do they not exist in spaces where they feel that their body is safe, but they're often marginalized in ways where they don't have access to resources to ensure that their bodies are safe, you know, because they can't get access to employment or, you know, money or all these different things that they don't have access to. So a lot of their life is just scraping together basic resources to survive. So they don't even exist in the space where they feel like their bodies are safe, that they can begin to go up the tier. So I understand that my ability to do those things is, one, a privilege. It's something that I've been privileged in my life, and I want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And also is something that I hold on to as my right as a human being, that I deserve to have these experiences, and I deserve to feel like my body is safe, and I deserve to do what I want to do with my consciousness simply by way of being. And so, yeah, like it's very much this space of like understanding that in order for marginalized identities to feel empowered to do so, they have to feel like their bodies are safe. And number one, we need to create systems so that their bodies can be safe. And also, as marginalized identities, we need to take back our safety.
Yeah. That sense of like that physical safety, in order to be able to feel like physically safe enough to explore, like that's, again, I'm not referring specifically to Burning Man only, but just like our extended community as a whole. It's a place that encourages out-of-body experiences and exploration,
Right.
so that we can explore consciousness. There was a video that I watched actually right before we started recording here. What was the name of this one? It was called "In Pursuit of Happiness: Black at Burning Man."
Yes.
I'll link to it afterwards. But like one of the things that they were describing, one of the individuals was describing, was that with so many black folks in jail for just weed, it's hard to get comfortable in an environment where people are doing LSD.
Right. Not only that, but also not feeling afraid that someone is going to become intoxicated and then harm you or have violence against you, because that's also part of our experience. Is like being out in, like I had a friend literally say, being out in the desert with a bunch of intoxicated white people, that does not make me feel safe at all. Like, you know, so there's that part about it too. So all feeling safe that you can use it without some kind of legal repercussion or losing your job, because we're scrutinized more heavily in society, but also feeling like those people would take care of your body if something happened with you, or if they got triggered by you in some way and they were intoxicated, is also something that, you know, we don't necessarily trust.
Right. For me, I think before going there and feeling that level of comfort about going to Burning Man and feeling safe was that I think I realized that the people there, whether being white or not, they were part of a different community. It wasn't just like white people. It was just burners, you know, and like people taking care of each other. You know what I mean? So if it was something like that exists like on a much bigger scale where it was like it wasn't about community and things like that, I actually wouldn't feel safe going there. And I would question if I even would have actually, wanted to go and experience or explore that type of world, for my first burn, and I'm just thinking about that now when you said that, but it definitely was me feeling like I was around my people.
Yeah.
Before I even knew that, whether it was white, whatever it was, like it was my people. They felt the same way about community. They felt the same way about humanity and things, and majority, I'm not saying everyone does, but majority of them did. And so that's why I felt safe enough to be there and be comfortable with being maybe one of the few black people there at the burn.
That's it. That's an excellent segue, actually, back to the topic that we were going to come back to. Evita, you had your experience at Bequinox. Okay, now I understand what this community is about. And Bequinox, for again, listeners we have a lot of international listeners who have no idea what that is. Bequinox is the Los Angeles regional burn.
Yes.
It's like 1,200 people.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this show, chances are high that you already have a pretty strong understanding of what regional burns are. But the fastest way that I always use it to describe to people, for listeners who are not familiar, is regionals are like, you go to Burning Man, Black Rock City is a city, and there's all these different neighborhoods, and there's 80,000 people there. Going to a regional is like picking one very specific neighborhood and only hanging out in that one neighborhood.
Yeah.
So you visited a neighborhood you technically visited a neighborhood and like got the experience. I want to come back to knowing like what you did after, like, was it right after that you went to Burning Man?
Yeah, it was. So I went to Bequinox, had a blast. There weren't any regional burns that were happening between now and what I call the Big Burn. And so, and I went to Ecuador. After I went to Bequinox I did an ayahuasca retreat. So I had no plans on going to Burning Man. Like, I was like, I'm not going to go. I'm going to Ecuador. I can't get the time off of work. Like, I'm not going to do it. But I was very careful, weirdly enough, to not say, I am not going to Burning Man. I'd always say, I don't have plans to go to Burning Man, because I was kind of doing this exercise of sort of changing the words that I use, to create my reality and all that woo-woo shit that we do, Yeah. And so I was like, I'm not going to say I'm not going. I'm going to say, like, I have no plans on going, because I kept feeling like I was supposed to be there this year specifically. Like, I was like, you got to get there in 2019. And I don't know why. And now that this coronavirus, shit has happened and it got canceled, I'm like, man. So I was like, Vita, you got to get there this year.
Got in there just in time.
Yeah. So I reached out to Bill Gilman again, and I just sent him a message, and I was like, hey, I think it was 3 weeks to Burning Man. And I was like, oh, have fun. I can't wait for you to come back and tell me all about it. And he was like, are you sure you can't go? He was like, because if I can get you a ticket, he said, and I fly you out to Reno, he was like, you can come to Burning Man. And I was like, bet. So from the time it got confirmed that I was absolutely going to Burning Man until the time I got on the plane and left, it was 11 days.
Wow.
11 days.
Adventure Bay.
So I had to take
Legit.
everything that I needed for myself in 5 days on a plane to Reno to get to Burning Man. I flew with my bike, my husband's bike, actually. Boxed it up, okay? Took it apart, boxed it up, flew with my bike to Reno, and took the burner bus to get to Burning Man. 11 days.
Wow.
Respect.
That is amazing.
And
I'm going to say that military training must have helped a little bit with that.
and I was like, Vita, you have to take everything that you need so that you don't ask anybody for anything. Like, even how I got my ticket was like, because it was 2 weeks before we got there. And so the ticket scramble.
Yeah.
And all the tickets are sold out. Everybody's selling tickets. I got people, I saw somebody post a picture. Somebody had sent them. They bought a ticket and they sent them a cardboard ticket. They made it it themselves. It was a total scam.
Oh my God.
It was construction paper.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, it was so petty. Like I was like, why would
Crayons?
you send the ticket? Just
I've
take the
never
money.
seen
It
that
was
one.
construction paper. It was so sad.
Was it a VIP ticket? Did it give him
They
backstage
gave
pass
them like
access?
it was so funny. They even made a construction paper booklet, like the Burning Man booklet that
Yeah.
comes with the ticket. They
Yeah.
even made a construction paper booklet.
Wow.
It was a total art project. That was like, wow, this is terrible.
That's almost impressive. Like I
It
almost want to
is.
give that
I was
person
gonna
that
say the
money.
same thing.
Right. So I reach out to this guy. He's selling his ticket. He lives in New York. And I was like, I want to buy the ticket. And he was like, okay, I'll sell it to you. And he asked me these, what are the Burning Man principles that you most embody? And I think I don't remember what radical self-expression, I think was the one that I chose. And so he was like, all right, I'm going to sell you the ticket. And so he said, come and pick it up. And he lived in New York. And so I said, I don't live there. I said, but I'll have my mom come and get the ticket. And so he was like, nope, I wanted to meet the person. Nope, not selling you a ticket, that's it. So now I'm like, shit, I got to try to buy this ticket again. But I told him, I said, cool, it's your ticket. You do what you want to do with it. No
Yeah.
worries. A few days later, he messages me. He says, you know what? I really feel like you should get this ticket. He said, so I want to call you on the phone. I'm going to talk to you about it. He did this whole interview. We had this conversation. And he was like, all right. He was like, you're the person I need to sell this ticket to.
Damn.
Right, yeah. So he was like, I'm going to sell it to you. And I told him about, being black at Burning Man. And I want to take
Yeah.
it. He was like, you know what? I have a friend who goes to Africa Burn. And she's South African. And she tells me about what her experience is like being black at a burn. He was like, I really feel like you should have this ticket. I'm going to sell the ticket to you. So now we're like trying to figure out how to buy the ticket from each other so that we don't get scammed. And so I tell him, I said, so this is what I'll do. I said, I'll send you half of the money for the ticket. You take a picture of it with this date written on a piece of paper next to it, so I know you have it in your possession. And he sent me the number. So I looked it up and made sure that it was legit. He said, I'll send you the ticket. I'll send you the tracking number. When I send you the tracking, you send me the other half of the money. So I was like, okay, that's what we'll do. So we came up with
Like,
this
same
plan.
time. I don't know you.
And so-
Same time.
Right. At the same time, I don't know you. You got all my money, right? And so, like, I'm like, okay. And I'm waiting with bated breath, and the ticket comes in the mail. So now I got the ticket. So now I got to get the ticket on the Burner Bus. So I didn't buy the Burner Bus ticket because I didn't have the Burning Man ticket. Go to buy the Burner Bus ticket. No more Burner Bus tickets available. So now I'm like, shit. And my friend is like, just go. He's like, just go, Burners. Just go. Get on the plane. You'll get a ride. And I'm like, bruh, I need a little bit more
I heard that
security
so
than that.
many times my first burn. I was like, all
Right.
right.
I was like, I need a little bit more security than that. So I just kept checking. The Burner Bus came. So I bought my gallons of water. So I'm walking through Black Rock City, rolling my luggage, right? Dust is getting everywhere. I ruined my husband's luggage set with my boots. This is my first time at Burning Man, and it was like arriving to, I almost felt like I was in Star Wars. It was like going to another planet. You know how it at once feels like futuristic and
Right,
primitive
right,
at the same time? So it was like arriving to some like foreign like planet.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, we're here, and now we have to survive. And so it was very much a exercise in, number one, learning to trust in my ability to manifest the life experience that I wanted to have, learning to trust in the kindness of other human beings, learning to trust in the universe that it will provide for me the things that I need. And then just experiencing that burner magic of like getting to this space and not knowing how you're going to survive in this place. And literally, like, I'll be like, man, I'm thirsty. And all of a sudden someone would just walk up and be like, hey, you want a Capri Sun filled with wine? And
got
you're like,
so many
what?
stories.
Like,
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Like it was very much this very deeply like metaphysical sort of spiritual exercise for me.
Yeah. That is absolutely beautiful. That's a dope first burn story. I want to
just
go
got
back.
chills when you were talking about
Yeah.
that. The first I forget. It's been like 5 years for me
Right.
now. My first one is like being there, and it looked like I was on some other planet. Mm-hmm. I remember just seeing it, hauling my luggage, and however many bags of groceries from the Burner Depot to my camp. It's a whole other story though. But yeah, it felt like being on another planet. That was the best way I could put it.
That is a good
you know?
description. Yeah. And the funny thing is, just you even saying that right now, Ken, it's making me think like, never get tired of hearing those first burn stories.
I forgot
You never
about
do.
it.
Yeah. And like, there are some like crusty old burners who like get all bitter. Oh, new people, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, I think that's where you've missed the magic. Maybe it's time you stop going.
Right, yeah. It's giving you all that it
yeah.
can. Yeah, move on.
Ken, you were describing earlier like the house and techno scene in New York, and I imagine that's where like some of Burning Man was being introduced into your consciousness. What was going on in that time period?
So actually, I had never heard about Burning Man until at least my first burn was 2015. So I think until maybe 2014, and that's goes into what I was saying earlier. Was my brother and I started exploring the scene out there in New York. So I went to my first like festival, like techno festival or like house music festival, and we were trying to find other ones to go to like around the U.S. and we found Tomorrow World, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
right? And so we were like, saying we're gonna go to that one, and then he comes back and he was like, "Yo, I just heard about some other festival that my friend just went to. Jess actually, like my friend just went to, and like she said it was pretty dope, and like you gotta check it out." And I'm the one I'm the researcher, kind of like to make sure
Right.
everything's looks good, and like it's what I want to go to, you know. So I was okay. I'm gonna check out both Tomorrow World and Burning Man, and we'll decide which one we want to go to. So I went and did my,
That's
did
a
my,
hilarious sentence.
yeah, yeah. Hear it now. Hear it now. It cracks me up.
I've been
And
wondering
so-
if I should eat pizza or an orange.
Yes.
Can't decide.
And so I started doing my research, and I'm looking at. I think I watched. I'd already seen a video for Tomorrow World and Tomorrowland,
Yeah.
and I was, let me check out Burning Man first, So I did just like a quick search, and I saw whatever video, like or whatever came up, And then I think I read the principles, and I was like, okay. At the time, I think Spark was on. I think it was on Netflix or something. That
Yeah.
documentary. And I started watching that. And I just called her up and I was like, "Yo, listen." I was like, "I'm going to Burning Man." I was like, "I don't care if I'm going by myself. If you end up not making it, if you end up flaking, but I'm going to Burning Man for sure. These are my people. Like, I'm not even looking at Tomorrow World anymore, And like that was that. I just committed, said like, no matter what, I'm going to the Burn. If I go by myself, like doesn't matter. I'm going solo. It's happening, and that's how I went to my first one.
Did he
And-
go?
Oh yeah, he went.
Okay.
He went. But same time, my brother sometimes, he could flake,
Yeah.
But I don't really care if you flake or not.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now that I'm going. You either get on board and keeps your word or don't. Doesn't matter. It's not changing my thing. And he even, I think there was one time he tried even still leaning towards Tomorrow World. I was like, yo, that's fine. Go. I was like, I'm not going to Tomorrow World. I'm going to Burning Man. Period.
Showers are nice, right?
Yes.
Sometimes
Very much so.
showers are all right.
Yeah, getting used to the lack of amenities was interesting. And I had a camp that had a shower gratefully. But I remember about day 5, I was like, I am over these goddamn porta potties. I was like, give me a real bathroom. Okay. Yeah. Like I was like, okay. Yeah, this is yeah. Like, I feel that. Showers are nice.
I actually didn't even know about that. I didn't know much about what I was going to experience as far as the weather conditions and like the no showers and things like that. But I'd come to a point in life where I was very comfortable with being like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I grew up. I was in Boy Scouts and became an Eagle Scout. So I grew up camping. So I knew I trusted in my like survival skills. So it didn't matter what was going to come out of that, but I knew what I was going to be getting. If I went to the Burn. So whatever work came with it, I was like, I'll take care
And
of
I
it. I'm
have
not
like
worried about it.
zero survival skills. So the fact that I even like go out and do these things is like now I'm like getting into hiking, and so I'm taking these like different hikes and having these experiences with nature. And I definitely have experiences with nature where I'm like, oh, Vita, you about to die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, because I didn't grow up camping. I don't have those survival skills. So going out, so I did a lot of actually research about what the weather conditions were like, what I'm going to need. Like, I was very, very, very intentional about that because I was like, you don't have survival skills, boo-boo. So if you get like lost out there or something happens, like your ass is grass. Like, that's it. Yeah.
Actually, the showers thing is interesting because like I didn't really think about that till like right now as we're talking. So like adding to that long list of things that makes it so that people of color might have a more challenging time feeling comfortable going to Burning Man. I think it's an important way you got to say that whole sentence. No, like everybody's invited, radical inclusion, but like there's some things that make it a little harder. And a lot of it does have to do even with us as well in the way that we view ourselves. I can't, like, when I grow a 5 o'clock shadow, okay, when I grow a lot more facial hair, it doesn't look the same as like when my white friends do it.
Yeah.
Because like somehow they look kind of more attractive. And I kind of look more terroristic.
Right.
And
Don't put it
so-
down on yet.
Yeah, like cleanliness is the thing. Like, right,
Yes.
like especially like I feel like that's something that a lot of us again are raised to like really be hyper aware of. Like Middle Eastern folks like will especially be like really hyper aware of like plucking hair and like hair gel and all this kind of stuff. So like I want to know if that's a thought that you're exploring as well. Like going like that long without showering for me was just unheard of. And I know it is. I'm not saying it's not for a lot of white folks as well. But the camping thing is the thing that we keep
Yeah.
talking about. My first time ever camping was Utopia.
Yeah.
a lot of people that I know that are active burners and like they camped longer, so it was like not as much of a new experience. So I don't know. Share some thoughts.
I actually never thought about the grooming aspect and how it would affect my how others perceive my physical appearance.
Yeah.
Until you just said something, you know. But
you're like fly as fuck too, by the way. Like for
stop
listeners
it.
who are not aware, like his fashion is always on point. Like he is. It's funny that you don't think about it because you're one of like the dopest fashionistas that I know. So obviously there's some thought there. You're just not aware of it.
No, it was. You know what though? It was like the thing that I was the most insecure about going into the burn was that I've been shaving my head bald since I think since like maybe 2002, 2001 maybe, and I started shaving before I even started balding. So I don't want to see myself start balding it, so I'm just gonna get rid of it now, you know. And so only thing that crossed my mind at the burn was that it's gonna be the first time that I wouldn't be able to like shave my head, and also
How often do you shave your head?
it depends. Usually it would be probably I would say like about maybe 3 times a week
Oh wow, okay.
or so, but it just depends on what's going on. But going to my first burn, I was like, it's gonna be the first time that I'm gonna be there and not be able to shave my head and have to just be okay with like seeing myself actually look like balding, and I had to get over that. And that, so it didn't hit me until I think when I got to my first burn.
Yeah.
So my second burn is when I kind of really started thinking about it more, and I just need to accept that and just be okay with it. So I've gotten okay with it now to where now, so you say how many times I'm here a week? I don't know, it depends. Sometimes it might be once now.
Right.
I've gotten okay with it. It's okay if I look like I'm like bald or whatever, so be it, you know?
I shave once a week now since coming into the burner life. Before that, I used to be daily.
Right.
Perfectly trimmed, perfectly groomed.
That talks about like one of the experiences that you have at Burning Man is you begin to shed these beliefs that you have about your appearance and like how you show up. Because for me, so I more concern myself with like my skin being dry, making sure that I had like lotion because I didn't want to be ashy, you know, and you know, dry skin is uncomfortable. And so like that was certain things that I thought about, or my hair, you know, because I need to, you know, you're going to have the dust blowing through your hair. And like, you know, we don't wash our hair daily. That's not something that we do. So I had to think about my, you know, how was I, and you want to be fly because it's Burning Man. So you do want to be fly. So like, how do I have like dope hair that's also resilient in the desert? You know, how do I keep my skin nice and glistening and that kind of thing? And so, so I like brought coconut oil and I sort of researched that kind of stuff. But for me, it was very much my body acceptance, which you and I talk about all the time, you know, because I had gastric bypass surgery back in 2016, and I've lost a considerable amount of weight, and my body looks like I've lost that much weight. And I did a lot of walking around Burning Man naked, you know, and sort of like being okay with like, because first of all, it's just hot as fuck. You know what I mean? So like during the day, it's hot as hell, you know, so there's that, but also like, wanting to be okay with, and I've gone to nude beaches before and, you know, parties where you could be, you know, nude pool party or something like that, but being in that large of an environment and sort of walking around in this new body that I have that I'm not really entirely comfortable with how I feel about it, you know, after losing all this weight and like having the evidence of that there and sort of having to come to terms with that, like how you had to come to terms with your hair growing back in, or how you had to come to terms with, you know, having that 5 o'clock shadow. And I feel like a lot of people that go to Burning Man and go to burns have that experience of sort of questioning their own thoughts about how their bodies show up, how they look, their appearance. It's where we go to sort of challenge those limitations that we place on ourselves and sort of stretch them. And that's such a very important part of the burner experience.
You realize that nobody fucking cares but you.
Yes.
No one gives a fuck. There, at least at Burning Man, but you.
Yeah, that's it's in a
and
lot
even
of
if
the
they
world.
do, who gives a shit?
Right,
Like, you know,
right.
fuck their burn.
that's
Right,
the next
exactly,
level
yeah.
it gets
And
to,
even if they do, because I definitely know people that have had experiences where somebody did,
Right.
and they're like, fuck you. Like, you know what I mean? So being able to say that too, yeah.
Well, in a lot of the world, most humans are too concerned about what you think of them to really be thinking about you. Like that's what's happening a lot. But this is like so on point with actually like one of those list of things that I had here. Respectability politics. From that same video, In Pursuit of Happiness, Black at Burning Man, there's a quote that I saved that I really like. it may be hard when you're coming from a background where respectability politics was a way of saving your life.
Yes.
So respectability politics, the definition of it is like a set of beliefs holding that conformity to prescribed mainstream standards of appearance and behavior will protect a person who is part of a marginalized group, especially a black person, from prejudices and systematic injustices. There are certain ways that we've, in our lifetimes, learned how to show up in order to protect ourselves, and it is a safety thing. Part of those things is like being showered and looking nice and not looking disheveled. And I've definitely observed that that's an experience that people with darker skin tones, no matter where I go in the world, are a little bit more hyper aware of. So going into an environment where you are letting go of that and releasing that as something that you used to hold on to with a little bit more of an iron grip than you realize can be a little scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is a bizarre thing to even think about. And then you do it over time and you're like, oh shit, like this is okay. I like this. But we also understand where it came from. You, Evita, you posted a little while ago, I remember, about, you didn't post it, you shared somebody else's quote about a desire to march in BLM, but also that sense of fear that you had about gender, not you, the person who wrote it, about gender identity. I think this person was queer identifying.
It was a trans woman.
Right.
And it was right after the George Floyd protests, like really like kicked off. And she said that she wants to march for her black brothers, but she feels afraid to march with them. Right. And what it was speaking of is the very real violence that black trans women exist under in this society that we live in. I think there's something like over 20 that have been killed just this year alone, black trans women, and have been victims of violence because of being trans, and transphobia, and how oftentimes being a black woman in general, but then also being a black trans woman specifically, we don't feel safe around our black brothers because of the violence that they inflict upon us. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of these identity structures, it's interesting. I mean, so much of the world, violence will exist a lot of times as a desire to protect these identities that we've created. You know, this thing. I am a man. I dress this way. I am masculine. I am heterosexual, et cetera, et cetera. So much of the Burning Man cultural experience is about ripping those identities away and exploring different things.
Right.
You know, exploring different gender identities, exploring different ideas, different things you're wearing, even walking around naked. These are terrifying things for I would say for the majority of the human population. So it is a daring experience to go out there and shed some of those skins.
Yeah, and then depending on, whether or not you're white, whether or not you're black, whether or not you're queer, whether or not you're trans, the permission for you to do so increases or decreases.
Right.
So whereas it may be a struggle for a white person to go to a burn and say, well, I'm just going to walk around, in my naked body and have to go through these limitations. I feel insecure about my body, or, this is not something that's acceptable, or this is something that's shameful, or whatever. You're going to have that many more layers to wade through the more marginalized you are.
Right.
Because there's already this, like, you don't even deserve to exist. And then now, you're sort of challenging that before you even get to challenge, okay, well, do I get to exist and walk around naked?
Right. Do I get to have fun here?
Right. Do I get to have fun here? Do I get to exist as a man and wear a dress? Like, you know what I mean? So, you have more layers that you have to challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of, this conversation, of course, like we're having it not because we're assuming that in this hour-and-a-half long podcast, we're going to answer all of the things that are wrong with race relations in the world. But I just wanted to kind of give like a little bit of insight into listeners. Like, radical inclusion, I have definitely personally discovered that radical inclusion is my favorite principle. It's the most powerful one. I didn't realize how important it was to me until I had experiences camping with people who I felt didn't really practice it. And they weren't doing it to be mean or anything. they just didn't really put any sort of energy into it either. And I feel like radical inclusion, part of being able to practice it very well, in my opinion, is having a better understanding of where other people are coming from and what experiences they're having, so that if you can make it 5% easier, you can do that. And that 5% easier could be, I don't know, creating an environment where, for example, people can feel comfortable having a conversation like this and asking silly questions and being okay with being wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the most important thing that I wanted to be able to contribute to people's experience from this conversation. And I'm so appreciative of both of you for being willing to be so vulnerable and put so much of yourself out there and being open to talk about all this. I know that this isn't easy, and I think there was a reason that the universe decided that it's going to take us a while until we finally get to this conversation, and this is exactly where we need it to be. I realize now this is the chat that we needed to have rather than the one I was trying to coordinate last year that looking back now, I realize was going to be more about Burning Man, the event, rather than this conversation that we had here. And I really appreciate both of you very much for stepping forward and doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for putting this on, too. Thanks for being my first podcast, my first real podcast.
You crushed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed having this conversation, and especially now because I feel like these conversations are being had in this very, very supercharged way because of all of the things that are going on in the world and all the racial inequalities that we're becoming more aware of. And so it's nice to have a conversation about this that isn't so charged with that energy, but it's just kind of this kind of frank discussion of like what it's like and different Black experiences, as opposed to this sort of supercharged, like, I need to have this conversation, we need to talk about this, because I feel like that's happening right now, but there's also a lot of emotion in it, as opposed to just, let me just sit down with this person and kind of talk about what this is like in a non-judgmental, open space, and just allow for us to be kind of vulnerable and just share.
Right. And I think that a lot of it, I think maybe a little bit in default, we hit certain points where sometimes it does turn into a shouting match.
Yeah.
In any relationship. And by the way, that's okay. It's okay to shout it out every once in a while. You know what? You're the professional coach. You can kind of affirm for me. Like, if you've never shouted it out with somebody, I wonder a little bit if you're having conversations.
Right.
You know? In default, my thought on it is that a lot of American culture perhaps was dismissing the conversation or not really listening, and it was a time to like really listen.
Yeah.
It was a time for different sides to really, really get their voice out there and get heard. And it's okay to not immediately have an answer.
Yeah.
It's okay to not immediately have an opinion. We don't. But like I said, like this recording that we just did right now is not meant to have a conclusion. Mm-hmm. It is a conversation. It's open-ended. It's going to continue.
Yeah.
And I
also feel like it shows people things to be aware of. Because if you're hearing about it, just like the example that we talked about of counting the Black people in the room, there's probably a lot of listeners that didn't even know that was a thing, because that's not something they do. You know, that they don't think about that. And so it's like, oh. And now they're going to become more aware of how many Black people are in the room. And start having those conversations and questioning, well, why is that? And start having those conversations with themselves. And that helps towards creating environments where people are being a little bit more intentional about inclusion, as opposed to just assuming that it's happening.
Right.
That's what I think. It's very, like what you said about the radical inclusion being your favorite principle. I think it's the most important one, like for the burn. I think for just humanity in general, you know, it's like not until we start being comfortable with discomfort, being comfortable with accepting people we don't know or understand, and become curious about them versus like scared of them, you know, like that's how we solve all these problems, or, you know, with race and, you know, and all that, you know, like there's something you said today about when you mentioned about a trans Black woman being scared to march with her like Black brothers because they're the ones they may harm her the most, you know, and like I never even thought about that, you know, never even thought about that, you know, so it's important to understand people, the ones that are especially much more different than you, so you know like how they see the world and like why they see the world that way, so that we can kind of connect with them better, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, my favorite principle is actually radical self-expression, But we can't have radical self-expression if we don't have radical inclusion, because we're going to
100%.
have these very limited self-expressions if everybody is the same. You know,
Right.
it can't be radical if there's only one picture that's being presented.
Yeah.
So in order to have radical self-expression, we have to have radical inclusion. So yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. They all kind of weave in and out of one another, and we need them all.
You know, that almost maybe should have been the name of this episode, Radical Inclusion. But because we're burners and we do snark,
Yes, absolutely.
we have we are able to have these conversations because we're able to laugh together and get into the ridiculous adventures together, or wear silly outfits, or do whatever it is. And that is how we do these conversations. This is where we get that. You know, I was telling somebody the other day, like, Burning Man helped me with my own racism that I had towards white folks without realizing it, right? Meanwhile, I'm looking at like the list of guests on this show when we were leading up to this one. I'm like, oh, like 90% of them are white. Like, I don't know about 90%, maybe 80-ish, something like that. I don't know. It's a big list. But I remember, like, just a few weeks ago, I was out in Julian, which is like the countryside just outside San Diego.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a parking spot, and there's this dude sitting there, white dude with like just like a baseball cap, and he had big sideburns. And I suddenly felt this trigger of, am I okay parking next to this guy? Is he going to cause me trouble? And then, like, immediately after, like, these 3 kids skateboarded by wearing like pink, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm still in San Diego County. It's not that far. But it was a moment where I remembered, like, oh, you know what? It was my experiences at Burning Man that showed me that what the person looks like from the outside, like, really affirmed for me
Yeah.
what the person looks like on the outside and the energy that they're delivering on the inside. Because I've, at this point, met many burners who, if I just saw on the street before Burning Man, I would have been concerned a little bit for my safety.
Yeah.
But then you meet them and you're like, oh, you're like all heart.
Yeah.
Like the side, most of your torso is taken up by your heart. And you just happen to look like a certain thing that triggers some people.
Yeah. And I feel like people are also having those experiences with you.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I make sure that I'm in the building, because they're also having that same experience with you, because they're carrying their beliefs about who you are and how you show up, and then they interact with you, and you're like, oh, you're nothing like that. And then that begins to challenge their beliefs and their perceptions,
Right.
and it creates a more broader picture of, like, how humanity shows up, and it teaches us to have individual experiences with people as opposed to experiences with people as to, like, what they may or may not represent.
Right. Absolutely. This was perfect. You're both absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm glad you met. I'm
Thank
glad
you
we
for
did
having
this.
us.
This was exactly the way that we needed to do it. I'm going to do the outro thing.
Yeah.
You can like make random noises in the background.
Professional.
But
Right.
Get 'em.
seriously, thank you both very much for openness and vulnerability, and I'm super proud of this episode. This was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, this is so good. I had a note here. Maybe there is a conspiracy to keep black folks out because y'all dance better.
That's a whole other discussion we could have about why people, I think, are afraid of black people.
Yeah, because we be stunting
Don't
though.
let me- yeah, that's. We only got limited time, but
Right,
carry on.
yeah,
On the
exactly.
next one,
yeah,
on the
yeah. We be
sequel.
magnificent on the scene,
On
right?
the
And that is
sequel.
intimidating. It is. So you're right. We yeah, that's another discussion.
There you go. You are now listening to the sounds of Jay Richards of Ebb and Flow. He camps with Mickey Beach, with Kenos, by the way. Shout out to Mickey Beach. This set was recorded Thursday at The Cloud at Burning Man of 2019. He was originally scheduled to play in the beginning of the week, but Burning Man happened and The Cloud was still being built. So his set
I was
got
at
bumped.
that set.
At his, Thursday night?
Thursday night. Yeah,
Dope. That's what you're hearing in the background right now.
I'm
I know you
excited.
can't. I know you're hearing it right now.
Great intro.
He was pretty psyched about that because apparently, like, he got to play like during peak hours on Thursday, so that worked out for him. Follow Jay Richards over at soundcloud.com/Joshua-Buehler. That's spelled JOSHUA-BUHLER. You can follow me on Instagram at Burner Podcast. That's all one word and spelled out. You can follow Evita's daily poly reminders on Instagram. That's at Levita Loca 34, spelled LAVITALOCA, and the number's 34. We'll link to all these in the show notes as well. And also follow Ken's super dope black and white photos at Kenos. That's spelled KENNOS_. That was clever. Well done. Please leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, and message us if you want to support the show by getting involved with design, production, or donating. And you're always invited to pitch interviews in your neck of the woods. We're always... and like I mentioned South Africa earlier, I ended up out there because listeners messaged me and said, come to South Africa. So I went.
Super rad.
So
I was so jelly. I was like, oh my God.
Never.
You just go to South Africa.
You never know. You never know. Whatever. We always want to hear from you, me and our producers. All these links are over at burnerpodcast.com. Burnerpodcast.com is a digital village of a few of us content creators. Other shows include Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline, Build to Burn, Into the Fire, and oh so much more. Well, maybe a little bit more. I don't know about so much more. Our producers are Louis Gallipo in Bermuda and Lana Boy based out in Brooklyn. Our opening theme music is America's Horse with No Name Remix. It is produced by Joman. You can find him at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. So until next time, love, light, and all that other crap. Take us back to the playa, Jay Richards.
imagination. In this world of isolation, a computer could rule the nation. Become your planet preservation. Your hands touch imagination. Isolation. A computer could rule the nation. Become your planet preservation. Your hands touch imagination. In this world of isolation, a computer could rule the nation. Become your planet preservation. Your hands touch imagination. Isolation. A computer could rule the nation. Isolation. A computer could rule the nation. Become your planet preservation. Your hands touch imagination. In this world of isolation, a computer could rule the nation. Become your planet preservation. Your hands touch imagination.
preservation. Your hands touch imagination.
Gone too far. I'm running on no sleep. I waited through the night within a million songs. Gone too far. I'm running on no sleep. I waited through the night within a million songs. I see the world searching through the screen light within a million songs.
burnerpodcast.com.